Hello again, this is Carter Machiavelli here with today's topic of Jordan Peterson. Now, I have to be a little bit quiet. It's 3 o'clock in the morning and my neighbors are sleeping, so I'm going to keep this quiet and quick. And the main topic I want to focus on is why I don't respect and don't like Jordan Peterson anymore. You see, everyone who studies psychology will have come across the controversial name of Jordan Peterson, who is a former clinical psychologist and a professor of psychology at the University of, I don't know anymore, somewhere in Canada. I think it was Toronto. But back in the day, I remember I discovered him first in like 2017, when I also went through some quite brutal mental health problems due to the death of a family member. And I remember that his college lectures and his college presentations, his university lectures, were pretty insightful to me. I simply thought he was quite a different mind, and I really appreciated him for being able to explain complicated concepts in a matter of simple words and explain them so that basically a guy like me back then, like at the age of 16, 17, could understand that. And this completely turned the other way around over the past couple of years. Now let me focus on 3 aspects of why I don't like Jordan Peterson at all. So the first one is going to be the Marvel scandal. I remember from back in the day. I think it happened a couple of years ago already, when the pandemic was going through. And what happened is basically that Jordan Peterson got, in his book 12 Rules of Life or something, got depicted as kind of like the devil or Adolf Hitler way in a Marvel comic. And of course, putting in so much effort into a work like a book or something that went pretty successful, just to be compared to it, just to get it compared to Mein Kampf, I can understand that that is a criticism or a banter that hurts. And I can understand that some people do get hurt easily by hate comments or other insulting stuff on the internet. However, as a psychologist, it should be clear for that person what that message is trying to achieve. It's not necessarily only about discrediting someone's work and manipulating the masses, like trying to control the masses away from that person's work. It's also about getting a reaction from that person. And of course, if you write such a book where it says like, stand up straight with your shoulders back, clean your room, whatever the fuck, which in and of it all, or thinking more deeply about it, actually pretty useful advices that make sense in a deeper way. However, if you become sort of the leader in this topic, or a leader for a community, it is essentially important that you do not contradict yourself by displaying yourself as weak. Of course, if you find it really like that hurtful that you need to cry about it, there's no like reason why you shouldn't. Like, you maybe haven't reached that point of mental toughness yet to basically transform these thoughts into something without crying first. But why the fuck would you do it on camera? So there are numerous amounts of reasons why people cry publicly on YouTube. For example, their kid dying in a car accident, which is completely fine. That also invokes sympathy in others. If you talk about it publicly on YouTube and just start to cry because of that, that's completely respectable. So that's completely relatable for some people of some sort. Crying after, like, I don't know, you had a girlfriend for 3 years and she broke up with you, and crying about that on YouTube is kind of like, you get into the more gray area there. This is like, alright, okay, I know it hurts, but get the fuck over it. Don't cry about it on YouTube. It happens all the time. However, getting compared to Adolf Hitler, and you start to cry about it publicly, everywhere, on interviews, on podcasts, on YouTube. Come on, man, grow the fuck up. Now, second thing is, of course, this clearly shows that people who study psychology and subjects in the psychiatric direction clearly don't know how psychological operations and psychological warfare works. Getting back to the point, like, Marvel wanted to create a reaction from that. If Jordan Peterson simply took his time off, like a couple of days or something, talked a bit about his family, cried there, resembled his thoughts, and then thought about it, what could be the reason for that. For example, that Marvel at that time, well, still is, owned by BlackRock, and BlackRock is one of the main contributors to this whole woke agenda with the yearly BlackRock letters sent to all other companies. It's quite logical and healthy to assume that BlackRock had his fingers in the soup by, for example, forcing Marvel to create such a comparison in order to keep the investments raising for Marvel, Hollywood, etc., where the whole woke agenda is pushed. And Jordan Peterson completely reacted in the wrong way for that. But, however, shit like this happens all the time, so people whine publicly about annoying shit all the time. He could have just made this thought, posted publicly, and people would understand what's going on, and that would more or less emphasize his own personality as a strong leader of some sort. Now, the second reason I don't like Jordan Peterson is simply the fact that I mentioned before, that putting complex concepts into simple words turn completely the other way around. So, at one point he began messing around with geopolitics and talking about presidential elections, talking about President Trump, etc. And he was always flexing about his knowledge of Dostoevsky, Crime and Punishment, etc. I have never read these books, but it was clear that Dostoevsky became his role model because he just started using the same words as Dostoevsky did, but in context and certain ways that I feel like he doesn't even know what the fuck these words mean. I personally, I don't know what most of the words he said there mean as well. And that's the point, 99% of the people don't know. So, okay, we get it. You like Dostoevsky, dude, but explain it more simply. Explain it so someone understands. I had this chat with one of my psychology professors who is teaching us general psychology now, very intelligent woman and knows how to explain psychology concepts and apply them into different areas of life, and overall very knowledgeable. And however she disagreed with me on that point, she said that it's not necessarily a sign of stupidity that intellectuals use very intellectual words to describe their thoughts, simply because intelligent people use more intellectual words or complex words naturally when describing their thoughts. And of course, this applies to some people. For example, like people with Asperger's like to use like complex words because that is the first thing that comes to their mind. But I think if you're in a position like Jordan Peterson, you should explain things as simply as possible. First of all, so that you can reach the most amount of people possible. And second of all, in order to not become phony. And in the case of Jordan Peterson, I clearly believe that as soon as he started talking about geopolitics, he became quite a phony. Now, my psychology professor or psychology doctor, she is not a professor, but she told me this great tip of recognizing experts by looking at the amount of theories of the future they have said publicly and looking at how often they were right. And certainly, if I remember correctly, like Jordan Peterson said at some point that Trump is not going to win any election anymore, and he was already wrong on that part. So, but of course it's also hard to look into the future, so there's that. But this also adds up to the point that Jordan Peterson may not be the geopolitical expert that he claims to be. And this sudden switch from his area of work, where he was a professor for psychology, into suddenly messing around with geopolitics is pretty shady, and to this day I don't really understand why he did that. But to explain that, I'll come to the third point and last point. It's when I recently watched a Jordan Peterson video. It was a podcast video, so Jordan Peterson made some kind of university or life or some kind of other bullshit, and he started a podcast as well, and one of the people he interviewed was Elon Musk. And that's when it became very clear who Jordan Peterson really is. When you look at the podcast with Elon Musk, it will become clear that Jordan Peterson has basically only turned into a narcissist who only likes to hear himself speak and doesn't respect even the people he's inviting on the podcast. So what happened in the Elon Musk podcast with Jordan Peterson? Now, I know there is a lot of controversy about Elon Musk currently, but let's take that aside for a minute and let's just focus on the podcast, on the main principle. Jordan Peterson invited Elon Musk to a podcast, and Elon Musk is obviously way more successful than him, has way more money than him, has way more influence than him. And Elon Musk was talking about his son who got lost in the LGBTQ scene, and that Elon Musk basically wanted to convey the message that because of this, he started to hate the deep state, or whatever you like to call it, and started to battle it. Now, while trying to get his point across, Jordan Peterson wouldn't let him finish talk. He was just like cutting in his words like every couple of seconds or something. Now, it does usually happen in conversations, also in podcasts, that someone just cuts into your sentence, or even the podcast host cuts into your sentence. It's not like really a polite thing to do, but it's the natural flow of conversation, so sometimes it can happen. It's not a big deal. But Jordan Peterson was doing it in every second and trying to play the smartass there. Every time Elon Musk was only in half a sentence or something. And this is where it should become clear to anyone that Jordan Peterson is not like the leader role. It's not a leader that some people that still suck his balls seem to portray. He's become a quite miserable, a public being who should learn to get back on his tracks and back to his older state, back to his older mental strength, before trying to teach anyone anything about life. If you are not able to let a person fully speak his sentences and fully convey his messages without trying to convey to everyone that you're smart or whatever, then you should really rethink your actions, cut a little back, and return when you have learned something about it. Thank you for watching.